The Prime Minister was doubling our national debt, adding more debt than all previous 22 Prime Ministers combined. He claimed there'd be no cost because interest rates, he said, were low. But those low interest rates are gone and the debt is still here. Yesterday we learned that interest on the debt has gone up by over 100% to $52.4 billion. That's more than the $52.1 billion we spend on health care, and double what we spend on the military. Why is the Prime Minister taking money from nurses and soldiers, giving it to bankers and bondholders?
Yesterday we tabled the fall economic update, which shows the solid foundations of our fiscal frame and also shows that we were able to maintain that fiscal responsibility while being compassionate and being there for Canadians. We're building more homes and we're building them faster. We're changing competition laws in order to stabilize prices in this country. What the Conservatives are proposing are cuts, is austerity. We want to claw back the supports to families, claw back supports to our seniors. That is not what Canadians need, and that is not what Canadians deserve.
Fear and falsehoods are the only thing they can use to distract from their disastrous record. They are the ones clawing back from seniors and from families with their quadrupling of the carbon tax. For the first time in Canadian history, we have 7 million people who are skipping meals because they can't afford to eat, and 2 million people, a record-smashing number, are now eating at food banks. There is a common sense solution, which is the Conservative Bill C-234 to take taxes off the farmers who feed us. Will the Prime Minister back down again, stop fighting this common sense bill, and stop taxing our farmers so that our people can afford to eat?
We are the government that decided that the retirement age should go back to 65, not 67, which was a decision that side of the House decided to make while their leader was in Davos, Switzerland. But let's stay in Europe for 1 second, Mr. Speaker, and talk about the appalling decision by these so-called Conservatives to turn down a free trade agreement with a beacon of democracy like Ukraine. What is up with that party? That's what Canadians want to know. And this carbon tax excuse, no one's buying. What's up, Mr. Speaker?
The pathological obsession these Liberals have with carbon taxes has now reached a level where it is sick. This is how sick they are on the carbon tax, that they would use Ukraine's vulnerability in the middle of the war to impose their destructive carbon tax on the people of Ukraine and make it harder for them to rebuild after the war. We already know this Prime Minister was used as a Russian propaganda tool when he brought a Nazi into the House of Commons. Why is he trying to damage the Ukrainian economy with a destructive carbon tax in this terrible deal?
Honourable Minister for International Trade.
The only ones who are not supporting Ukraine are the Conservatives. Let's be clear. The Canada-Ukraine free trade deal does not impose a price on pollution on Ukraine. And you know why? Because Ukraine already has a price on pollution.
I bet you knew that already, right, James?
We're here to support them because the Conservatives are not.
If it was already there, they wouldn't have needed to put it in the deal. We negotiated the free trade deal with Ukraine. We support free trade with Ukraine. We're the only party that supports a real trade agreement with Ukraine that would include supplying it with Canadian-made defense equipment, which they voted against yesterday. They voted against that yesterday. They voted against supplying Ukraine with clean Canadian energy that would repower their economy. So let's get this straight. They're against selling Canadian munitions to fight the Russian attackers, but they're in favor of imposing a carbon tax on Ukrainians. That's nuts, Mr. Speaker.
It was bad enough that this party is the only party in this House that doesn't believe in climate change, that doesn't believe in fighting the good fight against climate change. But on top of that now, when Ukrainians are dying literally on behalf of freedom-loving people of the world, they're fighting fascism, they're fighting totalitarianism, they're fighting against an illegal invasion. At that critical moment, what did they choose to do? They chose to abandon Ukrainians in their hour of need. Mr. President, Canadians will remember this moment, and we will never forget this shameful party.
It really is a pathological obsession for a party not only to look at its starving people, the 2 million people in Canada that have to go to food banks every month, the 7 million people who are hungry in Canada, but then to say that the misery from their carbon tax is not enough here in Canada, that they need to export it by imposing it in a pre-existing trade agreement. When I'm Prime Minister, we will have a real free trade agreement with Ukraine that helps them win and rebuild, but has no carbon tax. We will axe the tax here and make sure anyone in the world who wants to axe the tax has the freedom to do it.